Welcome to the Tell Me Something Good podcast. Ranked by the International Association of Awesome Podcasts as the best podcast in the history of podcasts. Wait, is that a thing? I don't think that's a thing. Anyway. Seeking to shine a light on all that is good in an ever-darkening world of negativity. Here's your host, Clint Swindall.
Hey everybody, I'm Clint Swindall, and this is the Tell Me Something Good podcast, the show that is all about building a more positive world by overcoming negativity. It is my goal each episode to engage your mind, encourage your heart, or enlighten your soul. I am so happy you're here. This is episode number 19 of the Tell Me Something Good podcast. Every now and then, I think it's important to stop for a moment to just say thank you. I started this podcast in hopes of helping some people get through some negativity in their life. And based on some of the feedback I'm getting, it seems to be working. If you've been with me for a while, then you know I speak for a living. Before the coronavirus pandemic shut down large gatherings, I traveled the world sharing my thoughts on a stage. While this podcast allows me to continue sharing my thoughts and hopefully inspiring a few people along the way, it is an experience of isolation I have never had. I'm a people person. I thrive on personal interaction, and there's not a whole lot of that inside this studio. It's me, a microphone, a bunch of equipment, my thoughts, and a whole lot of hope that it might be connecting with someone after it is mixed together and goes live to the world. And while it takes a commitment from me every week to produce another episode, it takes a commitment from you to invest the time to listen. And for that, I just want to say thank you. Someone once asked me in an interview what career I would have chosen if I didn't choose professional speaking. My answer was certain. I would have pursued a career in culinary arts. I enjoy cooking, and I'm a pretty big fan of eating. I try to do it at least a couple times a day. While I didn't pursue a degree in culinary arts, there are some things I depend on in my kitchen to ensure I'm producing some awesome meals. One of those things is the incredible product line offered by one of our sponsors, Texas Pepper Jelly. I first learned about their products in the competition barbecue world, where we've used their barbecue sauce and rib candy to help us win for many years. From there, we filled our pantry with their seasonings and rubs to take our everyday cooking to a whole new level. They've helped us produce great food, and they can do the same for you. Check them out at texaspepperjelly.com. Well, welcome back, everybody. Here we are, one more week into the days of the pandemic. I heard someone this past week say we were one more week into the nightmare. I choose to be thankful that we are one more week closer to the end of the nightmare. As I was considering all the ways we can view our current challenges, I thought back to a speaking engagement I had during the Great Recession of 2008. I was one of two speakers asked to address a company that was struggling. Just before I made my remarks, the speaker before me issued a simple challenge to the employees attending this company-wide meeting. He said, as you go through these tough times, you each have a simple choice to make. You can either choose to be bitter, or you can choose to be better. Which do you choose? As we face tough times in this global pandemic, many people have reason to be bitter. I had the chance to chat with one of these people recently. Based on his comments, I knew he was already done with 2020 and everything that came with it. After a few moments of small talk, he started unloading like we were long-lost friends when he said, "We can't get to the end of this year fast enough. I was afraid I was going to lose my job when all this stuff first happened, and I still may since the company president announced they'll be cutting 30% of the staff in the third quarter. What a great message to send when everyone is so scared. The way things are looking, 2021 won't be much better. I guess we'll just wait to see what happens." Wow. This guy was operating at a special level of negativity. As I listened to him talk, I realized there was a whole lot of bitter going on inside him. I stood and listened as he shared his thoughts on lousy, ineffective leadership and his dwindling retirement account. For nearly 12 minutes, not that I was counting, he went on about the economy and the upcoming presidential election. There's no question 2020 has been a challenging year for many people. While my new friend may have been discouraging, he was communicating what a lot of people have been thinking. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt will be a common theme for many people. In fact, I didn't learn anything new from his observations regarding the ills of the world. But I couldn't help but notice that amongst all the bitter, there was never a mention of better. Anyone can point out the challenges of the world, but your success in 2020 will not be based on your ability to notice all that is wrong. Your success in 2020 will be based largely on your ability to make your own better. The economy will get better, but in the meantime, you have a responsibility to make your world a little brighter. As you resolve to improve things in your life, I encourage you to consider doing the following 3 things. 1. Commit to learn something new. Some of you listening to this podcast are concerned that you may lose your job. Some of you are small business owners and you're concerned that ongoing government restrictions may cause you to lose your business. While no one knows what will happen or when it will all change, what I'm certain of is that you can do something to improve your situation regardless of what happens out of your control. You can learn something new, enroll in an online class, buy a book, learn a new language, get on YouTube and learn how to do something you've never done. No matter where you are in this pandemic, commit to learn something new in 2020. If your situation improves this year despite the hours you spent worrying, then your world just improved and you have a new skill. If you lose your job or your business is forced to close, you'll have another skill to offer a new employer or build a new business. 2. Commit to doing your best work ever. My new friend said his company was eliminating 30% of the staff in the third quarter of 2020. It's hard to stay engaged when you know you may be let go, but my advice to him was simple. Be a part of the top 70%. Sometimes performance doesn't matter if a company is eliminating a certain function, but often a company will keep the best people. Just turn the question around. If you were the boss and had to eliminate employees, would you keep the employee who does the bare minimum to get by while leading the daily pity party? Or would you keep the employee who is engaged, enthusiastic, and willing to do whatever is necessary to succeed as an organization? If you want to create a better 2020, commit to doing your best work ever. And 3, commit to being where you are. I worked with a lady years ago who never seemed to slow down and enjoy where she was. When she was at work, she thought about being at home or on vacation. When she was at home or on vacation, she thought about everything she wasn't getting done at work. As we face the challenges of 2020, we must commit to being where we are. We may live in a constant on world with the myriad of technology clipped to our bat belt, but we can slow down long enough to be where we are. Unless you are in a business that sells a product or service needed in this pandemic, you'll probably continue to have some challenges in 2020. Some may say, well, that's not a very positive thing to say on a podcast called Tell Me Something Good. To anyone who would think that, I would remind you that Tell Me Something Good is not just rose-colored glasses thinking. It's about being a realist, recognizing and facing the challenges life has in store, while focusing on the good stuff around you. So again, you'll probably continue to have some challenges in 2020. There will be many things you cannot control. But as you work your way through the third and fourth quarters of the year, it is my hope that you'll be able to look back at this year and identify something new you learned. It is my hope that you will sleep well, knowing you did your best regardless of the unknown. And it is my hope that you took time to enjoy where you were. If you can do that, you'll be ahead of most of the people in the world. And above all, you'll know that in a world full of people who have chosen to be bitter, you chose to be better.
listening to Tell Me Something Good with Clint Swindall.
It's easy to be bitter if you sit around listening to 24-hour bad news cable filling your head with every challenge facing the world. That's why I proactively go looking for some good news. And when I find it, I like to share it with you in this segment called
Good News from Around the World.
It seemed that life was finally giving her a break. A single mom down to her last $7 found a $1 bill in a grocery store parking lot. So she walked back into the store, bought a lottery ticket, and won $100. Just like that, her luck began turning around. Most of us in that position would probably keep the $100 and breathe a sigh of relief. But not Shatara Sims. At the urging of her 12-year-old daughter, she decided to donate all of her winnings to the family of a local Kansas City police officer wounded in the line of duty. For the Sims family, the desire to pay it forward is personal. When Shatara's eldest daughter was killed in 2012, Kansas City police officers went above and beyond to support her family as much as possible. The detectives were really there for us, Shatara said. They were there for us more than anyone I can imagine. They did things they didn't have to do. They came to see my kids. They did a lot. They were fathers, therapists. They were everything. Not wanting to make a fuss about her generosity, Shatara called the Kansas City Police Department and made her donation anonymously. She told the officers on the phone that she had been dealing with several hardships of her own, recently losing her job due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But in spite of what she was going through, Shatara felt that the family of the wounded officer needed the $100 more than she did. The police tried to convince her to reconsider, but Shatara was insistent. Since she didn't even leave her name and number, she assumed that brief phone conversation and her sense of inner satisfaction would be the end of the story. It didn't take long, though, until the local police precincts were abuzz, touched by Shatara's kindness and gratitude. A group of officers became determined to find her to express their own thanks. To hear her call and just express thanks for no reason other than she's thankful, it's really impactful to us, Kansas City Police Department Sergeant Jake Bacina said. After finally locating Shatara, the police department decided to set up a GoFundMe page to help her family with their financial situation. They called the campaign Helping the Woman with a Heart of Gold. And the response was overwhelming, with strangers and officers donating more than $145,000. People like her are hard to come by, wrote Kansas City resident Chantel Childs on the police department's Facebook post that announced the campaign. A person that would give to a stranger and not eat for herself, she deserves support. It's amazing to see my community come together for this person. Makes me proud. Last Sunday, Shatara and her daughter visited the wounded officer's colleagues at work, some of whom were on the scene when Officer T was critically injured in the line of duty. In a Facebook post, the department expressed its gratitude for being able to connect with these generous souls. It took a while to find them, but we're so glad we did. Sergeant Jake said that it is a kindness like Shatara's that really keeps police officers serving and protecting, even when times are tough. Her gesture may have seemed small at the time, but it ended up touching people's lives in a way she never could have imagined. And then there's this. Todd Burkemper has worked hard since graduating college in 2011, and luck has followed him throughout his career as an app designer and senior software developer at Buildium. But while golden job opportunities propelled him forward, he never stopped looking back, watching over his younger brother. Todd had a home built in Wentzville, Missouri 2 years after graduation, and though finances were tight for a while with a house and car payment and student loan debt, he was determined to succeed. Although 6 years apart in age, Todd and Alex have always been the best of friends. When Alex graduated from college in 2017, Todd invited him to live with him, 30 miles outside of St. Louis, instead of moving back home with Mom and Dad. After allowing Alex to live rent-free for 6 months, Todd decided it was time to start charging rent. But, unbeknownst to Alex, Todd took his full rent payment every month and made a deposit into a savings account. Todd even added some of his own money and hoped that one day it would provide Alex with a down payment when he decided to buy a home of his own. And during the pandemic, Alex decided to go for it. On May the 26th, his offer on a home was accepted, and the boy's parents, being privy to the secret over the years, excitedly gathered with their sons for the surprise. And their mom wanted everyone to hear the heartwarming story. Although Alex was puzzled when he saw me with my camera out, he was even more confused than completely shocked when Todd held up a screenshot of the savings account balance on his phone, Barbara Burkemper said. Then he told Alex the money was his. After posting this story on my Facebook page that evening, their mother wrote, and reading all of the heartwarming responses, I felt compelled to share this story of brotherly love with a wider audience. The generosity shown by Todd is just one of many amazing facets of his character. We are so very humbled by the awesome human being he has grown into. And that, my friends, is some good news from around the world. All right, everybody, we are about to wrap up. Before I end this episode with a challenge, I want to remind you that this episode of Tell Me Something Good has been brought to you by Texas Pepper Jelly, the home of some of the greatest products to take your kitchen game to a whole new level. From their line of seasonings and rubs, barbecue sauce, and the original rib candy, rib sauce, and pepper jellies, you'll find everything you need to become the hero of your household. Texas Pepper Jelly products help some of the best competition cookers in the U.S. to win, and they can take your backyard barbecue game to a whole new level. Check them out at texaspepperjelly.com. And now the challenge. Before you come back for the next episode, I challenge you to consider how you are allowing this pandemic to impact you. Is it making you bitter or better? While there will be disappointment in the challenges you may face, and in some cases even anger, are you allowing these emotions to make you bitter? We each need to process our emotions, deal with them in a productive way that will not allow them to become negativity with constant complaining and excessive pessimism. And as you process them, focus on making yourself better. If you really want this podcast and this specific message to positively impact your life, then commit to learning something new, doing your best work ever, and being where you are. Well, that's all for today's episode of the Tell Me Something Good podcast. I sure hope you'll join us again next week. In the meantime, be listening for that special episode of Champagne Friday each Friday morning. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. If you're liking the podcast, leave me a rating and review. By doing that, you're providing the social proof some are looking for when deciding where they'll invest their time listening to a podcast. Also, next week's episode will be our 20th episode of the podcast. I'd love to hear what you think. What do you like? What do you not like? What do you want more of? What do you want less of? Let me know. Jump over to findthegoodinlife.com and click on the question or something good for the podcast button right there on the front page and give me some feedback. As I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I'm a people person and I thrive on personal interaction, and there's not a whole lot of that inside this studio. I am mindful of the fact you have limited time in your life to listen to podcasts, and I want this one to be meaningful and useful if you're willing to spend time with me. So give me some feedback. And while you're there at findthegoodinlife.com, feel free to ask a question to be included on the podcast or share your good stuff. Thanks for listening. Until next week, I'll be praying for God to bless you in mighty ways. Now, get out there and love on somebody.
You've been listening to the Tell Me Something Good podcast. The content of the podcast is meant to engage, encourage, and enlighten you to become more positive, It's not meant to diagnose, treat, or replace the personalized care provided by a trained professional. If you're struggling with depression or mental health issues, please reach out to a counselor for diagnosis and treatment. Until next time, be positive, people.